Giants Week 12 rankings debate. Joining me on the line as he does for every single rankings debate from RotoExperts.com, from the Fantasy Sports Network, from the Fantasy Radio app. It is Le All-In Kid, Francais Jake Ciely. What's up?
What's going on? That might be the best introduction yet.
Well, I'm trying to get you across the border. I mean, the international people, especially les francophones, need to know about Jake Ciely.
That is true. And I've been across the border a few times. You know that.
Yeah, but have you ever been to La Belle Province, Quebec?
No, I have not.
Probably for the best. I'm not going to, unless you spend
do that very well, by the way.
Well, je parle français, so it's not too difficult for me to translate into. I mean, that's one of my hidden skills. I speak French. Who knew? I did, but people out there did not know that, I bet.
No, I've known you for years. I've actually been to your old apartment. I never even knew that.
Yeah, I try to mask that as much as possible. It's not so popular in Canada once you get outside of Quebec.
Wait, mask that fact that you could speak it, or letting people into your apartment?
Probably both, but especially the French thing. That's really frowned upon.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it goes along with, the ornery side of you. French people are ornery, so it works.
And I smoke, and I drink a lot of wine, so it does make a lot of sense for me. And I do enjoy a good croissant from time to time. But we are dealing with a short week here. The Thanksgiving games, obviously there's 6 on Thursday. So happy holidays, Jake. I don't get to celebrate these holidays. I have to work through your Thanksgiving and my Thanksgiving. That's always a lot of fun. But I do have a Periscope after the first game on Thursday. After Minnesota and Detroit, I'll be live on Periscope taking your questions for the week, for the rest of the slate, if you want a late swap on DraftKings, everything like that. So check that out on Periscope. You can access that through Twitter as well, at the PME. So I'll be live taking your questions. You need a break from your family? Come join Pat Mayo. I'll come hang out with you. It'll be great. And, I need something to kill my afternoon, too, after I record the shows. But if you're watching this after the fact, I mean, most of it's still going to be relevant, but obviously some of your players are going to be locked in. Situations will change, and I'll have all my rankings updated every single day on dkplaybook.com. If you check the link in the YouTube article and on Audio Boom and iTunes, you'll see the links for the rankings up there. Jake, where can everyone find your updated rankings throughout the week?
Yeah, I'll be doing the same thing as you, working radio, doing links updates on Thursday morning, on Thanksgiving. We're both there. I worked on your Canadian Thanksgiving. I'll be working on American Thanksgiving too. But yeah, rotoexperts.com. I tweet it out all the time. See, this is what you got to get joined on with me over here. It's the hashtag. Check the link that I got going this year.
All right, let's get into running backs to kick this off. Number 1 on the list, I'm sticking with Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell, he's pretty good. Even when he has terrible games, he still scores like 24 points. It's perfect. But it goes Bell, Gurley, Kamara. You have guest ranked that awful Mark Ingram at number 4. But the one guy I want to kind of talk about is Kareem Hunt. He's been, I don't want to say dreadful, but he has been far less than a lot of people have expected after his giant breakout to begin the season. He's no longer putting up 40-point days. He's barely scratching the surface on 10-point days. But this Bills run defense has been annihilated the past 2 weeks. Is this the spot where Kareem Hunt gets it back going? Because I say yes.
I say yes, too. And for the fact is like you just said, people are complaining because he's not putting together the numbers that he did for the first 3 weeks of the season. Up until just a few weeks ago, he was still totaling over 100 yards per game. Like, oh, God forbid somebody doesn't, score a touchdown and 100 yards every single week. So the past 3 weeks, a little disappointing, especially the game against the Giants. Or I should say 3 games and then the bye weeks thrown in there. I think it definitely gets back on track. I mean, look at what Buffalo's been doing. They've been getting 50 points a game at this point. LaShawn McCoy is the only thing they got going offensively for them. So when your offense can't even stay on the field that long, what does it mean? The other team's going to be on the field plenty. So I think this is the perfect cure to what ails this team. It's what the doctor ordered. Any cliche you want to throw out there, Alex Smith, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Kareem Hunt, fire them all up and enjoy the results.
All right, so LaShawn McCoy comes in at number 6, followed by Carlos Hyde, Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, and I have Tevin Coleman tentatively at number 10. That would be under the assumption that Devonta Freeman misses another week with his concussion problem. Do you think he ends up suiting up this week against Tampa?
From the sounds of it, doesn't sound like it's very likely. We talked about it last week. The Dr. A guy that we had on our network over here said it's something that could potentially be season-ending. So I would be surprised if he's back this soon for the fact that it sounds like something they should have taken care of a while ago until he got the second concussion. But we can't play that game now. I think it's doubtful. I think that's still a little bit high, even in PPR for me, after seeing what happened last night. And the fact is the Seahawks defense isn't that great anymore with all the injuries they suffered. I don't like the fact that he had 20 touches and still didn't do a ton with them. And then he only had, 1 reception in that game? I expected put it this way. If you would have told me that's what he was going to get touch-wise, before the game, I would have expected a lot better box score.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that Seattle's run defense is still a little bit better than its banged up pass defense right now.
Right.
But going against Tampa, there's a high projected team total for Atlanta. He's getting all the goal line touches. I mean, it's not unreasonable to really expect him to score a touchdown in this game. And if that's the case, if he ends up with 20 touches again against Tampa, I think he crosses 100 yards.
And that's fair. I'm a little down on the yards, and I don't have him that much further behind him. But I would definitely, with the way that McCaffrey has been going this season, and Lamar Miller, by the way, credit to our boy. I think it was who was it? Roger McDowell, I think it was, from Dynasty. He tweeted out earlier this week the top 5 running backs on a points per game basis over the last month. Lamar Miller is number 4.
Yeah, so that was actually a really tough one for me because when we drop into this 11 to 20 level, I have Christian McCaffrey at number 11 against the Jets. His reception base is just so safe that if he does anything more than just catch passes, he's basically a top 10 option for the week. So I'm not going to rank him behind Miller, but I have Miller next at number 12. And now that Donta Foreman is out for the season with an Achilles injury, Alfred Blue will step a little bit into that handcuff role, probably see some additional work, but it really seems like you can almost pencil in Lamar Miller to, let's say, 80% market share of the Texans offense?
I would say so. He hasn't been that far from it. He's been in that 60, 70%, even topping 70%. Actually, go back, it was a few weeks ago, Deontay Foreman had 1 snap that entire game. So he's done it before. My only concern is kind of why I won't argue too much. Like, again, I would put him, Tevin Coleman, that being behind Lamar Miller, but I won't argue with you that much, especially when it comes to Lamar Miller, because what we've seen, as was last year, is when you ask him to be a workhorse, he kind of fails. He needs to stay in that. Go back to the Dolphins. Obviously, they knew something, and we kept banging on the table that we wanted more touches for the guy. But that sweet spot seems to be that 15 to 18, somewhere in that kind of range of touches. Once he starts pushing that 20-plus, there's been some good games, but more often than not, he seems to struggle once you start pushing him a little bit too much.
I guess the big thing why I would still rank Coleman over Miller in this spot is I agree with you that the more carries that you give Lamar Miller, the less effective he seems to become, at least from an efficiency basis. Now, he's going to be involved in the passing game, potentially more than Tevin Coleman, but even though Foreman is out, I don't necessarily think that he might just be given every goal line carry. They seem to really have an aversion to giving Lamar Miller the ball once I get inside the 5.
Absolutely, and that's where Alfred Blue could come into play, as you mentioned. So that's just the fact is they don't want to use him there, maybe because of that factor. Maybe that's just more of a wear and tear during the game that he doesn't need to take. He's just not effective in that aspect of the game. So I'm with you. And then you look at Baltimore. They still haven't been great, but ever since Williams' return, they have been better against the run.
All right, after Lamar Miller goes DeMarco Murray, and then I drop down to Jerick McKinnon on Thursday. Samaje P. Henson. Samaje Perine at number 15, although Byron Marshall could take over that Chris Thompson role. We'll see. Jordan Howard, Dion Lewis, Doug Martin, Duke Johnson, and Joe Mixon. That's followed by Orleans Darkwa, Jamal Williams, Alex Collins, Danny Woodhead, and Theo Riddick. There's like a drop-off point here. Like, I like Murray, but I'm always concerned that Derrick Henry is going to come in and steal his thunder. Jerick McKinnon, we saw it last week. He played more snaps, but Latavius Murray gets the 2 touchdowns. I don't think that's something you can really bank on every week. I would still trust the volume of Jerick McKinnon, the big play upside, especially against this Detroit defense in a game where they might have to continue passing. I think the Lions will score a few points here. And then you have Perine, who I expect to walk into around 70% of the workload in Washington against the Giants. That's a good spot. Jordan Howard, that's a really good spot. Then there's a drop-off. Like, I have Dion Lewis ranked at number 17, but all of a sudden it could no longer be Dion Lewis, and I'm not going to be super stunned if that happens.
No, I've been saying it all year long, and for the people that are like, oh, he's fine. Like, okay, yeah, remember when Mike Gillislee was fine? You remember when James White was fine? I mean, how many times do we have to do this, let alone do it in one specific season with these Patriots running backs? I don't understand why people just want to keep banging their head against the wall when it comes to trying to figure out the uses there. So, yeah, I think that's a fair spot for him. It's an advantageous matchup. That's the best part about it. The one that I thought you were going to get to is the one that right after him. That's where I have a problem. I would not put Doug Martin in this range.
What's your case against Doug Martin? I don't love Doug Martin that much either. And this could definitely be a Charles Sims game, but I think that if Tampa has any shot here to compete with Atlanta, it's handing the ball off to Doug Martin 20 times.
I don't care if it does, because look at what happened last week. It was a great matchup. He got plenty of touches and did nothing with them. Doug Martin hasn't done anything since really that first game that he came back. He's been miserable. I want nothing. Even if you give him 20 touches, what are you getting, 65 yards? He's been miserable.
at least you still get the goal line potential with him. And it's not really the ranking for Doug Martin this week doesn't really have to do with his talent and his potential upside. I guess there is a touchdown upside there if he does get those touches, but it's the guys after him, like Joe Mixon against Cleveland. Cleveland's run defense is pretty damn good, and Joe Mixon's been abysmal so far. Duke Johnson might play 30% of the snaps. You're banking on... What's that?
I like Duke more. I do like Duke more. The fact is, I like Duke more. I like Danny Woodhead more. And I definitely like Jamal Williams more. I'll take 20 touches from Jamal Williams being abysmal versus 20 touches from good old Doug Martin looking abysmal against a great matchup.
Well, for right now, I still have Ty Montgomery listed as if he's not going to play with the rib injury. Now, this is the second time he suffered the rib injury this year. He could come back and play, and then it throws a giant wrench into this entire situation. And the worst part about that one, and one of the reasons that I factored this in, the reason I had Jamal Williams bumped down a little bit is because there's going to be the uncertainty of whether or not Montgomery is going to play, because that's a Sunday night game. So you might need to make a decision on someone before that time. And I don't know if I'd hold my breath for someone with as limited of upside in a bad matchup as Jamal Williams.
No, that's certainly fair, and I have no problem with that. But again, and I'll go back to another one though. But Danny Woodhead, the fact is, Houston's run defense is good, but it's not good against pass catching running backs. They've actually given up the third most fantasy points over the last 4 weeks to pass catching running backs, or actually, I think it was even second. It was really high. And Danny Woodhead, look, he led the team in targets and receptions last week, not yardage, but it was his first game back. I'm moving Danny Woodhead I'd switch those two. Danny Woodhead is over Doug Martin for me in a full point PPR, and I'm not even thinking twice about it.
The only hesitation I had with Woodhead, and I brought this up on the waiver show, he had 13 snaps and he had 6 targets. That's a very good ratio. I wouldn't expect that ratio to keep up, but you need his role to be expanded because he basically maxed out what he was able to do. If they continue to lean on it. What's that?
I mean, Mike Clay, I said, do you? Mike Clay tweeted it before the game last week that he had 8 fantasy points on 7 touches before he got hurt. I don't know that you necessarily need him to have his role expanded.
He needs to play more than 13 snaps if I'm going to list him inside my top 20.
That's fair, but I think if he gets double, even if he only gets 26 snaps, I would take that.
Yeah, listen, if he gets 26 snaps, then he's probably a top 15 option. I just think that they're easing him back in right now, and it depends on how this game goes. If Baltimore jumps out to a lead, I don't think you're going to see much of Danny Woodhead. You'll see more of Alex Collins, and Alex Collins, just by being on the field, was able to soak in a lot of targets last week. So I think I would rather still roll with him this week until I actually see that Danny Woodhead has a more expanded role.
I believe in Danny.
I love Danny, but I think it's hard to really just project. I hate him. Yeah, you're right. He is so gritty, though. I mean, how can you hate anyone with that level of grit? And
he's sneaky athletic. He's a toolsy player.
Yes, he is the every white man cliche in football that you could ever possibly want. That is Danny Woodhead.
He's the David Eckstein of football.
Oh, he could be. Who is the other one? David Eckstein. There's a new one that everyone talks about like that now. Dustin Pedroia. I think it's Dustin Pedroia.
Well, he's like 70 years old now.
Yeah, but when it moved from but you brought David Eckstein. When it moved from David Eckstein, it went to Dustin Pedroia.
That's fair.
We need someone else to fill in that gap now.
Gritty white dude. Guy. Yeah.
So the rest of the 20s, like I have Theo Riddick. I expect him to have a pretty reasonable game against Minnesota. A lot of quick passing. That rush is very good. The offensive line in Detroit, not so great. Getting healthier, but still nothing to write home about. So quick passes. So Golden Tate, Theo Riddick, those are always spots that I like them when the Lions have to check down a lot. So I like him more than I like Amir Abdullah this week. Not substantially more, but I do like him more. Adrian Peterson is just garbage, but he still gets all the touches, and they just cut Andre Ellington. So he's number 26. Damian Williams, Burkhead, Abdullah, J.D. McKissick. I don't know really what to do with. He's number 30. Thomas Rawls was a healthy scratch before the Monday Nighter, and they promoted Mike Davis, who looked really good, but then he hurt his groin, so he's probably not going to play anymore. McKissick played basically every snap. Lacey was absolutely terrible. Rawls might work his way back in this week, but McKissick, number 30, is that too high, too low, just right? What do you think?
No, I think it's just right. Yeah, like the porridge, it's just right. And the fact is, I was on Mike Davis. Actually, during the game last night, I tweeted out that I said I was too high on him, obviously, in that 2015 draft. But this is what I liked about him, and I tweeted out my basic breakdown of him. And you saw the potential. He's fast. He ran a sub 4.4. And if you look at his ability between the tackles and his patience, his vision, it was on display. And then the biggest problem that he's had for most of his career is getting hurt. So it sounds like, as you just said, already today on Tuesday, that he's not likely for Week 12, maybe even past that. So it's McKissick and not much. I mean, Thomas Rawls probably won't be a healthy scratch. with no Mike Davis and only Eddie Lacy left over with CJ Prosise out for the year. But I would go with McKissick anyway, especially because we are talking full point PPR. I'd probably even still take him in a standard. Rawls has been miserable. And as you said, Eddie Lacy's just trash.
Yeah, the one hesitation I would have with McKissick is people are going to look at the snap share from the Monday Nighter and be like, oh man, McKissick's playing 65% of the snaps. But that had everything to do with Davis going down and them just not wanting to use Eddie Lacy. You throw Thomas Rawls back in that mix, and now you're dealing with like a 15-point favorite in Seattle at San Francisco, and they're probably going to run the ball more. If they're going to run the ball between the tackles, it's probably going to be with Rawls, not McKissick. I still prefer McKissick for the amount of touches that he's going to get, but I just think there's a lot of upside really taken away because they might play some of the other backs.
100%. This is a good way to look at it.
Devontae Booker comes in at number 31 here. You're a big Booker guy, and I was actually just kind of scanning back through some of our preseason talk, and our advice in the Broncos backfield was don't draft C.J. Anderson, don't draft Jamal Charles, just wait till the very last round and take Devontae Booker, and then I think he got hurt the next day. But this is the role that we always sort of envisioned him in, that he probably is the most talented one. He's the better pass catcher, and now we're seeing that now that Brock Osweiler is at quarterback. I don't think you can pencil in Booker for 70% of the team's snap share, but if he plays over 50 this week in this matchup against a weak Oakland team, I think that he could have potential upside. Now, the reason that he's down in the rankings is because there's a lot of potential downside if things swing back the other way, but if he can stabilize like 3-4 catches a week, he's going to be someone that could really help you towards the rest of the season.
Yeah, I actually have him as a sleeper this week in my column with the rankings, as you mentioned before. That's somebody that I'm a big fan of. The door finally swung last week to his favor where he was in the lead. And the more touches, the more yards has been there, the more receptions have been there. And actually, it's actually been more like 4, 5, 6 at times. So you're looking at this third option on this team in the passing game, really behind Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So I'm just looking at the opportunity here. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm starting them over both, and I have no problem in being your RB3 in flex. Obviously, when you talk about RB3 flex, that's the risk you just mentioned. That's associated with that, but the upside is definitely there. If Oakland's offense can show up a little bit, just keep this game flowing, and then the Broncos don't run away with it, which would be surprising if they did anyway, I think that you would see a decent day from him.
The next two guys on the list, Elijah McGuire and Jay Ajayi. I'm really concerned that Jay Ajayi is playing like 20% of the snaps. I thought his role was really going to grow coming out of the bye week, but Blunt was the one who led in that backfield. Now, is it because the game got out of hand? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe this is just the role that they want to do. Run 4 running backs out there, and that's going to be it. So I can't really have any faith in Jay Ajayi. He's my favorite of the Eagles running backs, but he comes in at number 32. I would start Elijah McGuire over him. I would start Elijah McGuire over Bilal Powell as well. I expect Matt Forte to miss this week with knee swelling. Now, that's not confirmed yet, so this could always change. That's why you have to pay attention to the updated rankings on DKPlaybook.com. However, McGuire played 52% of the snaps the week before the bye over Bilal Powell, and he was the one they used in the passing game, which I found super surprising. I think that they're just giving him an extended look to see if he's someone they can actually have for the future, where Powell's going to be a free agent. He's 29 years old. They probably just don't care.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what's seeming to happen, because you would say, hey, no Matt Forte, it's Bilal Powell time. And that hasn't happened at all. It's been basically a timeshare, as you just said, and it's a timeshare that has leaned McGuire's way just a little bit here. So I'm with you. Elijah McGuire, if I'm given the choice between the two. If you told me talent-wise, if you said the two running backs, who do you prefer? I'm going to take Bilal Powell every single day. But Elijah McGuire, some similar skills to Tariq Cohen, similar running back in some ways. They like using him. They like putting him on the field. This is the Jets. Look, they like using Matt Forte when Matt Forte is healthy. They like doing what they want to do. And to your point, this at least makes a little bit of sense. Like the Matt Forte thing, never really understood that much, especially given his age and similar with the contract. He could be gone, all that type of thing. But for your point, looking at McGuire, see what he can potentially bring in a timeshare next year, I think makes a lot of sense.
The rest of the 30 range goes Kenyon Drake at number 34. I have Williams over Drake here. Marshawn Lynch, Frank Gore, Derrick Henry, Alfred Morris, Marlon Mack, Shane Vereen. Then it's like Rod Smith, Latavia, C.J. Anderson, Powell, Taron Ward, Blunt, Isaiah Crowell. Is there anyone from... What's that?
I was going to say, to go back to that, to the Blunt, you just reminded me with the situation with J.J. Yeah, I don't even feel that comfortable about where you have him, but because of the upside of what he can do with the one run, I understand it. But everything you were just saying, we can't ignore the touches. They're just not there. You're going to tell me 9 carries and I'm supposed to use somebody in my starting lineup? Is 2 straight weeks of that, or 2 straight games of that. And you go back to Doug Peterson. What has he always kind of done as an offensive coordinator? He kind of goes down the line and is like, all right, it's now your turn at running back. Okay, it's your turn at running back. all 4 of them were involved. Corey Clement got the first touchdown, which just pissed us all off. So
no, wasn't it Kenyon Barner who got the first touchdown?
Yeah, yes, right. Barner got the first one. Clement got the second one.
It's not a situation you really want to be invested in. I'm just saying if you have to play one, you play Ajayi.
Yeah, exactly. If you have to. But at the same time, would it surprise you, as you mentioned, what if this game script, all of a sudden they're up early, they get 2 quick scores, they get a turnover, and all of a sudden it's LeGarrette Blount for the rest of the day?
No, I wouldn't be surprised about that whatsoever. Would you still play Morris over Rod Smith? Rod Smith outsnapped Morris, but Morris got way more involved in the actual production on the field.
100%, because when they were out of that game and they were behind, Alfred Morris kept getting carries, and they kept giving him carries, and they kept giving him carries. And the best part about it, at least if you're saying as an Alfred Morris owner, is you know how many catches and targets Rod Smith had? 0 in a game that they were getting destroyed. So I think it's clear the Cowboys are going to Alfred Morris.
Do you find it weird that DeAndre Washington keeps playing more snaps than Marshawn Lynch?
No, I think it's just the fact of, no, weird in a way of why did you sign Marshawn Lynch, but not weird in the way the fact of, looking towards the future and who's more effective in this team.
I have Austin Eckler at 48. I'm not a believer. I think he got 2 weeks ago, he looked really good against Jacksonville, and that was probably necessary to use a more pass-catching running back because, the Jags' pressure comes so strongly that you need to get the ball out quickly. That made sense to me. Last week, he didn't do anything until the Chargers got up by like 40 points. I don't expect him to be all that involved this week. I think there's going to be a very heavy Melvin Gordon game. Now, I think there's going to be blowback against that ranking, but I wouldn't feel comfortable starting Austin Eckler.
No, and that's the problem. It's 2 things. He's going to have value when Melvin Gordon gets banged up in the game, which is always a potential. Or, as you mentioned, they're either blowing the other team out, and you'd probably give him a few snaps just to keep Melvin Gordon healthy, or they're getting blown out and want to use him a little bit more in the passing game. He's proved he has the talent and value for this team, but when you have a talent like Melvin Gordon, what he's been able to do for this offense, for this team, as long as he's healthy and producing, why do you turn to Austin Eckler? Yeah, he's a nice backup weapon to have. You're very lucky that a lot of teams don't have that, but you don't go to him just because you have him. So to your point, I'm not going to give you any problem with that ranking. That's a fair spot for him to have. You have to understand the risk that's associated with him.
Do you think that Austin Eckler has moved up to number 1 in the handcuff power rankings?
He's always been in that top 5 conversation and probably even top 3 for me this year because of Melvin Gordon's injury past. If you just told me all the number 1s went down, though, I think I still go with James Conner just because he's playing for the Steelers.
Yeah, that's probably the way to go, too. It's Conner or it's Eckler. Just the way that Andre Williams is the backup, the 3rd stringer on the Chargers right now. Right. So if Melvin Gordon went down, I think we'd see like 100% Austin Eckler.
Maybe 99%. They just throw Andre Williams out there, but when they're up 39-0.
Wide receivers, I still have Sterling Shepard in the rankings right now, although news, I just saw it break across my screen.
I was just about to tell you about it.
that he's not practicing with migraine, so he might be a DNP. So don't worry about it. He's in the rankings right now, but just check back. I'll update them if he's declared out. If he does play, I would play him, though. I have him right now at number 16 in the rankings against Washington, because I think if he's on the field, he's going to get double-digit targets.
Oh, absolutely. This is kind of turning into the Percy Harvin situation. Actually, when Percy Harvin was somewhat good for a little while, is if he's playing, you have to start him. I hope that he doesn't head down this road, not just selfishly for fantasy purposes, but just for him in his life. And we saw what it did to Percy Harvin. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it's similar to a lot of these situations. Go back to Melvin Gordon. It goes back to him. If he's healthy, you're starting him. Or if he's starting, you're putting him in your lineup. So the same thing with Sterling Shepard. The Giants announced on Thursday morning he's starting that game, you have to put him in the lineup.
All right, so the 2 guys that I have listed as questionable and that are in the rankings, Jordan Matthews with his knee looks like he's going to be back this week, and Sterling Shepard, who has the migraine problem I have in, I might have to take him out. The guys I do not have listed in the wide receiver rankings, this affects all the different situations, and again, that's why you have to pay attention to the updates. Once we get more injury news, we'll know better, but I don't have Tyler Boyd, Marcus Wheaton, Will Fuller, Alan Hearns, Calvin Benjamin, Chris Hogan, Sammy Coates, Travis Benjamin, or Trent Taylor in the rankings, and officially declared out Robert Woods, Curtis Samuel, Terrell Pryor, and Jeremy Curley because he's on the juice. He can't play right now. So,
fair enough.
I mean, for a real little guy, it's really shocking that he's on steroids.
He's trying to keep himself scrappy and sneakily athletic.
Oh, that's true. He's the Danny Woodhead of receivers.
There you go.
So number 1 in the rankings at wide receiver for week 12, I have Antonio Brown. No duh. Then I have T.Y. Hilton. You got a problem with that?
Yeah, of course I do.
Why? What do you got against Ty?
I've got 3 good games and the rest being miserable against Ty. I know it's at home and it's on the turf and blah, 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 but he's had that before and hasn't shown up. There's certainly the potential. Look, you're either going to be right, he's the number 2, or you're going to be way off when he's like 32.
Well, here's the big thing. I mean, 32 is probably even generous if he has a down game. He's probably like 71 or 1, and that's the way that it works out. But I love T.Y. Hilton in this spot. Tennessee's secondary is garbage. And if there's one situation that he's going to take advantage of, especially being at home and being on the turf, and we'll see it when we get to my Jacoby Brissett ranking later on, that I just think the Colts are going to be able to pass all over Tennessee. And I think that T.Y. Hilton's in store for one of those like 150-yard weeks.
And that's fair. There's no way. And of course, you're starting everybody in this conversation. But if I had all these guys on one team, there's no way I'm starting him ahead of Thielen, Doug Baldwin, Cooks. I mean, he's probably down in the Tyreek Hill conversation. But again, you're starting all these guys anyway. I like the fact that you came back around with DeAndre Hopkins after last week.
Yeah, listen, I went out on a limb and I said that he wouldn't beat Patrick Peterson for a touchdown. I thought he would be limited, and he wasn't. I mean, the guy's skill overcame the situation. I was dead wrong on that one. You were right, and I took a lot of heat for that one just because of the ranking to begin with, and I was wrong. Listen, I'm wrong all the time. But I think historically speaking, I mean, Patrick Peterson had limited every single decent receiver he had faced so far this season to nothing. Yeah. It's a testament to how good DeAndre Hopkins is as just a talent that he was able to overcome that. So I'm not really too concerned even with Macho King Tommy Savage chucking him the ball. He's just, you play the guy.
No, absolutely. And look, hey, I had Kareem Hunt as my number 1 running back last week. That didn't work out too well.
But Thielen is probably, it's funny, like we talk about like Christian McCaffrey, sort of like the safe running back where he's going to get his 4 to 5 catches every single week. Adam Thielen is that plus the upside at receiver so far, at least 5 catches in every single game. Like, if you're not treating him, like, I have Julio Jones at number 5, but that's only matchup based. Like, if there's going to be a matchup where Julio can actually break out, Tampa seems to be the right situation. But like, if you were to offer me Julio Jones for Adam Thielen right now, I'd take Adam Thielen 100 times out of 100.
No, it's 100% true. Like earlier this morning on the Fantasy Football Frenzy, this is what I said. Tell me this isn't the perfect comparison. Julio Jones is this year's Todd Gurley. You keep putting him in your lineup. You keep putting him in your lineup because you have to. I'm not going to put him on my bench and watch a 200-yard game happen on my bench. But he's been disappointing. And if you just talked about pure talent compared to what you have on your team, you probably picked up Adam Thielen off the waiver wire. He actually deserves to be benched for somebody like Thielen, but he's Julio Jones. You can't bench Julio Jones.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Julio Jones is still the 15th highest scoring receiver of the year, and he only has 1 touchdown. So the weird thing with him is he's providing a great floor every week and 0 upside. So put it this way, if you drafted Julio Jones with like the 5th pick or whatever he was, it sucks that he was the 5th pick and you took him there because he's not providing those sorts of returns. However, when you go back and look at the people that were drafted in the first round, it wasn't a waste of a pick.
No, okay, that's fair. Todd Gurley was at least a waste of a pick last year, and I just looked real quick. He's 23rd in standard, so I think that's the more painful one. Is I think there's a lot of standard league players out there that are more frustrated than the PPR folks.
Sure, I mean these are PPR rankings, so you always have to take that in consideration when we're breaking down the analysis of it. But like he scores basically at least 10 points every week, which isn't great. But I mean, if you dodge Zeke or if you dodge Odell Beckham or
It's the Michael Thomas complaint. Michael Thomas is in the same boat. He's been a top 10 wide receiver, but everybody's just saying, "Oh, Michael Thomas hasn't won me a week."
Yeah, well, Michael Thomas is the 7th highest scoring receiver of the year. The guy has the perfect floor every single week. The touchdowns just haven't materialized, and touchdowns are tough. I mean, remember the year with Kelvin Johnson when he got stuck on the 1-yard line like 7 times?
Yeah, well, that's Julio Jones. Mike Clay tweeted that. Is another one. Mike Clay is good for tweets about this. He's got his OTD, so I think he's got 10 red zone targets and 1 touchdown this year. That being Julio Jones.
Yeah, it's tough. Like sometimes this stuff doesn't break your way. Other seasons where, I mean,
or you drop him.
Yeah, what's that?
I said, or he drops them.
Yeah, that's always tough too. I didn't enjoy John on the Monday nighter. John Gruden was like lipping Julio Jones for not creating enough space near the goal line or near the sideline for Matt Ryan to throw to. But Matt Ryan threw it like 20 yards over his head. There's no way he could have caught
receivers that, like, this is back before the season started. Obviously, it didn't work because he got hurt, and then the Giants started off miserably, and they went downhill, and he's out for the entire year. But Brandon Marshall, people are talking about, oh, he can't separate anymore. Brandon Marshall was never a big separator. Calvin Johnson was never a big separator. When you're Julio Jones and you can just out-muscle, out-jump, and out-skill everybody when the ball is coming your way, you don't need to be the best separator in the world.
And do you know who actually puts that to good use? Number 9 in my rankings, Devin Funchess. I mean, I'm going to keep riding him. I know Greg Olson's going to come back, but I wouldn't expect him to be 100% integrated back into that offense. But if there's a few guys that you can basically punch in for like 6 catches a week and get a few red zone looks, Devin Funchess is one of those guys. And he's playing the Jets.
And he's been one of the best waiver pickups this year if you got him early on before everybody else waited too long. So he's been terrific, and it's been a rock solid, as you just said, especially in PPR. He's been a rock solid, like, fringe wide receiver 2 with the upside of fringe wide receiver 1 just every single week.
So, I mean, so you're not going to give me too much blowback on ranking him number 9 this week ahead of guys like Keenan Allen or A.J. Green or Tyreek Hill?
I wouldn't rank him that high, but, I mean, we're nitpicking. I mean, I probably slide him down to Golden Tate, Jarvis Landry range, even with, I know Matt Moore's at quarterback, so probably ahead of Landry, but now we're talking 4 or 5 spots. So I'm not going to get a huge argument. It's going to be more like the running backs where we're talking about 10 spots in my mind.
All right, so Keenan Allen, A.J. Green, 11 and 12. Then it's Tyreek Hill, Golden Tate, Jarvis Landry. Tentatively, Sterling Shepard is number 16. Fitz, Elshon Jeffrey, Robbie Anderson, and Devontae Adams, the only Packer who's, like, startable, I guess, unless Jamal Williams is the only running back there. But he seems to be unaffected by Brett Hundley, whereas Jordy Nelson is just unownable.
Oh, yeah, Jordy Nelson's been droppable for a few weeks now. Devontae Adams, I just love to see the value here this year because I think we talked about it on your very show earlier when it happened with the switch over to Brett Hundley. And I said my biggest concern was Devontae Adams because he's red zones, touchdowns. That's where a lot of his value is coming from. The complaint from last year was a lot of people saying, oh, he's so touchdown reliant, didn't even have 1,000 yards. And so let's just ignore the fact that he had finally developed into the receiver everybody wanted him to be and figured out how to catch the ball and run better routes. Nelson was the one that was a lot more touchdown reliant than he was, but I still have my concerns. Those are out the window. Brett Hundley just keeps turning to him. There's actually somebody we're going to get to in your rankings. It just comes down to the fact when the quarterback is going to pepper that receiver that many times per game and loves going to that wide receiver, you're going to have value even if you only catch half of the targets.
Okay, if Sterling Shepard does miss the Thursday game, would you play Roger Lewis or Travaris King or just nah?
I wouldn't go that far. And to be honest with you, if I'm rolling the dice on either one of them, I'm going to go with Tavares King because he's got the bigger big play ability downfield. I think Roger Lewis is the safer play, but Roger Lewis has been left out before. But if you're looking at it, Eli Manning, for whatever reason, even in that game last week against the Chiefs with the wind, he kept throwing the ball downfield. Now, Eli Manning's biggest problem for the past couple seasons is he's not connecting on that deep ball. We've already seen it this year. We are overthrew Odell Beckham. I don't remember the last time Eli's throwing a ball to a wide open wide receiver downfield over 40 yards and actually connected. But that's the upside that you have with Tavares King. So if both of them are going to come out of the game with 3 or 4 catches, I'm going to go with the person with the deeper targets, and that's Tavares King.
All right, the 21 to 30 range, I go DT at 21, Crabtree, Diggs, Dez, Juju, Richard Matthews, Emmanuel Sanders, Cooper Kupp. I have ranked the highest of the Rams receivers now that Robert Woods is going to be out. Marquise Lee, then Nelson Aguilar. Who is the receiver that you think that I should move up? Is it Demaryius Thomas?
We haven't gotten to him yet, but out of this group, I would have Cooper Kupp higher. Cooper Kupp still in the top 3 in red zone targets.
Yeah, it's been a while for Cooper Kupp here. He's really living off what he did like the first 3 weeks.
No, it has, but he's still seeing targets every single week. And as you just mentioned, there's no Robert Woods. And guess what? The best part about this is even if Lattimore plays, because he came out of last week's game, he's not going to see a whole lot of Lattimore because he's mostly running out of the slots. And so I think that Cooper Kupp, I'm not even worried matchup-wise because let's go back to if Lattimore is completely out, the rest of the secondary is still not very good. The only thing that's helped this team is how quickly they can get after the quarterback. If you don't have anything in the secondary, that's going to they work together. As we've seen in the NFL, you need one to help the other. So if that's not helping and they're not getting after the quarterback the entire game, that secondary outside of Lattimore is still struggling.
I do think that Lattimore ends up playing, though.
Okay, well then, you should be more worried about the other option, Sammy Watkins, than you should be Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tentative on Cooper Kupp. I mean, Higbee could end up scoring touchdowns. Todd Gurley could just do everything. I mean, I don't even know who their number 3 is going to be. It could be Pharaoh Cooper. It could be fake Mike Williams. He could always get back in the mix. Remember him?
Yeah, I do remember fake Mike Williams. There's like 17 Mike Williams. The other one I would actually move.
No, sorry, fake Michael Thomas.
Oh, fake Michael. The Michael A. Thomas.
Yes.
That's when we decided that one was Michael Thomas and the other one was Mike Thomas.
At least they did something to break it up. It's not unlike that situation where we had 2 Steve Smiths in the league at one time.
Oh, then one of them went with Senor, so that worked out.
Yeah, that was Steve Smith Senor. Anyway, guys in that range, I'm trying to think of who the guy is who's getting all the targets. Is it Corey Coleman?
No, well, I do like Corey Coleman, especially the first game back, led the team in targets, receptions, yards, and it was against a terrible matchup. So, yes, I would have Corey Coleman higher, but no, it's 2 more. Go down 2 more.
You think I should rank Kenny Stills that much higher?
Yes, Matt Moore is in love with this guy. Like, I think that, I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're childhood best friends. He is in love with him. If you go back to the game that he replaced Jay Cutler the first time, 2 touchdowns, the most targets, yards, receptions. The time he started, the most targets, yards, receptions. The game last week when he came in for Jay Cutler, targets, yards, receptions, and a touchdown. For whatever reason, Matt Moore just is going to Kenny Stills whenever he can.
I guess my only hesitation here was that the 2 games that Matt Moore has looked good, he's come in replacement. The teams didn't get time to prep for him. And the one game that he started, he was fucking terrible. And I'm pretty sure...
That was a bad matchup.
Listen, the Patriots defense has been really good.
They've been better. They don't know they've been really good.
Listen, if you give them a week to prepare for Matt Moore, I think they can figure out what he likes to do and take that away.
I think they can take people away too, but I mean, really, look, again, I go back to if you're going to get double-digit targets, you're going to have value. I'm not telling you to put Kenny Stills up by Michael Crabtree.
All right, so where should I move Kenny Stills up to? Like, would you start Emmanuel Sanders or Kenny Stills?
I would actually, so you're 2, I would start him behind Marquise Lee. I would start Marquise Lee, then I would go with Kenny Stills.
All right, so I'll move Kenny Stills up to number 30 between Marquise Lee and Nelson Aguilar. Does that mean I should move?
But I would still go Coleman over Stills too.
Okay, so I should move. I like Doxson this week. I think Doxson against the Giants is a really good spot. I really like that, especially without Pryor around. I think there's going to be the potential for Doxson to really, I don't want to say be a game changer down the stretch, but I think he's someone you can pencil in like 6 to 10 targets a week. And the guy, listen, you've talked about it for 2 years. The guy's talent is off the charts. If he can just develop a rapport with Kirk Cousins, and it looks like it's getting there, he could be an impact fantasy player down the stretch, potentially win someone a title.
Matchup-wise, though, I like Crowder more in this game. The fact is Janoris Jenkins still does care, and still Janoris Jenkins is playing.
Janoris Jenkins didn't care too much to stop Garrett Selleck 2 weeks ago.
And exactly, so we're pulling out the one game, and that was when everything was in disarray. But look at the last week, and you look at what he's done for the majority of the season. You know, no quarterbacks are always going to be perfect unless you're Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Bouye and this Jacksonville Jaguars, although who had a little bit of a down week last week. Janoris Jenkins on Doxson is a huge concern for me, especially if you look at what's the more advantageous and the easier option. Like, where's the water going to go the easiest? You just follow the easy path. The easy path here is Jamison Crowder against 0 running backs for the Giants, has always been the case, against a team that always is susceptible over the middle of the field. And I'm looking at a Vernon Davis, Jamison Crowder. I love Doxson. You said it. I know it. I'll admit it. I think next week is a better case for him. I'm looking more. If you gave me my rankings in PPR, Jamison Crowder is going to be above Josh Doxson.
I have Jamison Crowder at number 40. I think a lot of that stuff over the middle just funnels right to Vernon Davis. And I think if they're going to take shots, they're taking it with Doxson. I'd rather play Doxson this week.
I don't have a huge problem with it, but I'm just telling you that's where we differ. I know I'm not always going to win and get you to change everything in your rankings.
Hey, listen, when you make a compelling case and I have no counter for it, then listen, I'm going to side with you. If there's something I do feel strongly about, then I'm going to stick to my guns on it. And this week, I do think that Josh Doxson outscores Jamison Crowder. I think if you're looking for 7 PPR points or 8 PPR points, Jamison Crowder's probably a safe 8 points, but I don't know how much upside he has. If I'm playing upside plus floor, Doxson's my guy.
All right, well, let's go back up your list and get Des Bryant behind Emmanuel Sanders.
Dez Bryant had like 16 targets last week.
I don't care. Look at what it turned into the past 2 weeks. What do we know about the Chargers? Just like the Eagles, they can get in this backfield pretty quick with that.
The only counter I'll throw to that, and I updated these rankings when I heard the news, was Tyron Smith looks like he's going to play this week, and that should at least keep Dak upright long enough to complete a pass or two.
So Tyron Smith is playing?
Yeah, he's not for sure playing, but he practiced Tuesday, he practiced Monday. It looks like he's going to play.
That only makes me feel mildly better.
It makes me feel, put it this way, it makes me feel the fact that he can't have more than 1 second to throw the ball without Smith on the field, it just puts Smith back on the field. Like, you're doing a lot better here.
I would play Juju ahead in front of Dez.
I have them 1 spot apart. Listen, if you want to go with that, I'd rather play Dez, but if you feel good about Juju, I feel good about Juju too. I think he's a good play. If you want to play him over Dez, go nuts.
All right. I got 1 spot at me.
The one guy that I do like from that Dallas game, though, because I do think that there is going to be a bit of pressure, I mean, not a bit, like probably a lot, is Cole Beasley. We got away from like slot receivers kind of killing the Chargers, but they are susceptible in that part of the field. Less so since Denzel Perriman returned, but he's been better at stuffing the run than he has been in pass coverage. Now, against Nate Peterman, it really didn't matter. He just threw the ball to them, so it was really, really hard to gauge. But I think that Cole Beasley is a very, very sneaky play in terms of the Thanksgiving slate on DraftKings and for your lineups in PPR leagues this week.
Yeah, is that going to be the most ridiculous thing this week if they actually go back to Nathan Peterman?
They might.
Does that make is that the Chiefs' defense just becomes the most chalk thing in the history of football?
Yeah, but I don't even know if I just want them to. I think Tyrod's in such a good spot here if he does start that I think you can play Tyrod pretty comfortably because I think he's just like, it's FU Tyrod game. Like, hey, here's why you should start me. But like, I don't think that Peterman will be as disastrous as he was last week just because the Chiefs' pass rush isn't very good.
Well, that's true. And to be fair, if you watched it, like, most of them were, and he probably could have had an extra one, but not every interception was 100% his fault.
No. Before we get off receivers, the 3 guys that I have ranked very lowly, who normally would be much higher, I had Devontae Parker in the teens last week. Didn't work out. And now that Matt Moore is playing quarterback, I dropped him down to 42. Amari Cooper against Denver, number 43. Fun fact about Amari Cooper, never really does so hot against Denver. And then Marv Jones, this is assuming Xavier Rhodes plays, but if Xavier Rhodes plays, I'm not playing Marv.
I have no problem with that. That's 100% the same way I would feel. I don't want Marvin Jones in my lineup. But you mentioned the same thing about Cooper. I thought that's very interesting. I've seen it before as well. Which, because football just means he's going to get 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sure.
Listen, Amari Cooper's that guy. I mean, the fact that he caught a touchdown last week and didn't have 200 yards was like mind-boggling. I didn't think those sort of games existed for him. But you're always shooting for upside. Just Amari Cooper's the type of player that I hate. He's a great tournament DFS play, but in a season-long fantasy football lineup, like, I don't trust the guy ever, and like, especially this week in a bad matchup.
People got pissed at me this preseason when I called him a poor man's Brandon Cooks. Doesn't look so crazy now.
No, not so much. At least there's a consistency to the upside of Brandon Cooks. It's just you never know what's going to happen with Cooper.
No, you don't. He's as bad. You want to go back real far. He's as bad as Santana Moss. You got to get him about 4, maybe 5 times a year. Good luck picking out those games.
Sure, but the whole thing about there was never really a time, except for like that 1 year where Santana Moss was super consistent, that he'd ever be ranked as like a top 20 receiver. He was always just a guy that you drafted late that you plugged in if you needed someone, and you hope that big game came on. People project onto Cooper like he's the best receiver in the league.
That's 100% true. You're 100% right, and that's what I said in the preseason. People see those 4 or 5 games and think, oh, well, he's got the skill. He can do that for the entire year. Do you know how young he is? Do you know how talented he is? Do you know how good he can do this and that and the other thing?
Quarterbacks. Do you think that Jimmy Garoppolo could start this week?
I don't necessarily see it because there hasn't even been that much talk about it. Initially, when the trade happened, I was thinking it was going to happen. I think that if it happens this week, it happens mid-game.
I can see that. As of right now, all the rankings reflect C.J. Beathard playing. Blaine Gabbert I have is playing. Ryan Fitzpatrick I have is playing. And Matt Moore I have is playing as well. I said Blaine Gabbert, I believe, but I have him in there. So all the rankings reflect that situation. Should anything change, I will update the rankings to reflect those situations.
No Paxton Lynch for you?
No, I assume Brock Lobster is still going to be in there for another week.
Yeah, I think he is too. Brock Lobster. I like it.
Number one in the quarterback rankings, Tom Brady. Guy's been good. He, out of all, I know Zach Eason always, he is the late round QB guy, but never, it seems, has there been a year where taking the late round QB was the way to go. Brady is the only one of the highly ranked quarterbacks who's doing anything this year.
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins was going at Kirk Cousins was going at like the 10th or 11th quarterback off the board, though.
No, not in our draft. I mean, yes, in our draft, not in your home league. He was
he was. People weren't big. People wanted Matt Ryan so badly. Like, you drafted Rodgers.
That's true.
Rodgers got hurt. Matt Ryan's been okay. Drew Brees has been okay. Like, Brady's the only one. Like, Kirk Cousins was in that mix with all, like, the next level guys, but those guys were going around, like, 8, 9, 10. Like, people reached on Brees. I guess Russell Wilson's been really good, but people were sort of hesitant about him, too.
Yeah, people were definitely hesitant about Russell Wilson. I remember there was one league I got him with Drew Brees because it was an auction and everybody was kind of like, whatever. And I was just like, all right, fine. No problem. I'll take him.
Put it this way. Roethlisberger was going ahead of Kirk Cousins.
That's just because people are stupid.
Well, it still happened.
I doesn't make it right.
Sure, it doesn't make it.
I know he was going in front of him.
Cam Newton's actually after the first few weeks, Cam Newton's actually been pretty good.
Actually, to go back to Matt Ryan, it was Ian Rappaport tweeted out this morning. The last 5 games for Matt Ryan, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 0 2-interception games. The quarterback rating's over 100. The offense is starting to click finally.
Yeah, and my rankings reflect that this week. Number 1 is Tom Brady. Carson Wentz, 2 against the Bears. Kirk Cousins, number 3 on Thanksgiving against the Giants. Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, Alex Smith, Drew Brees, Jacoby Brissett, number 9, in the Riv. Phillip Rivers coming in at number 10. Take your shots here. Who should be lower? Who should be higher?
I would have Jacoby Brissett as a sleeper this week, but I don't have him that high.
I think you can roll him out there pretty confidently. He's sort of like the rich man's Deshaun Kaiser, because even in the games where he struggles, he certainly does enough with his legs, especially from a rushing touchdown upside perspective, that he can always save your week, and this is the best matchup he's going to get all year.
He is, but outside of T.Y. Hilton, if T.Y. Hilton doesn't have that game that you're predicting, what else is going to happen? I mean,
listen, he had Moncrief. He could use Mack out of the backfield.
I was just going to say, don't reference the Moncrief and Chester Rogers blown coverages against the Steelers.
Well, listen, if there's a team that can give up more blown coverages than the Steelers, it's the Titans. And Jack Doyle is basically like 9 for 90 now.
Yeah, okay, that's fair, but there's no way. And I was the biggest probably hater of Jared Goff heading into the season. And even I'm not starting Brissett over Goff.
I just think, listen, I don't mind Goff. I have Goff at number 11. I think he's a QB1 this week. But I just love the upside with Brissett, especially because I think the Titans are still going to score. Now, I think that's more of a rushing thing, and that's hard to figure out which one it's going to be. That's why Mariota's a little bit lower. But I just think that you're going to see Jacoby Brissett drop back here like 40 times. The Titans have no pass rush. It's one of the few teams where he's actually going to have time in the pocket to throw.
No, look, in this same game, I would even take Mariota over Brissett.
I wouldn't. I mean, I'm telling you, it's Jacoby Brissett week. Lock it in. Top 10 play.
All right, you can do that, but you do have to change your rankings. Paxton Lynch is expected to start this week.
Oh, really?
Yep, just came through as we're doing this right now. Like this immediate moment, Dan Graziano is reporting the Broncos plan to start Paxton Lynch. And Byron Marshall is supposed to take over the Chris Thompson pass-catching duties, but not quite to his level, which that's not a surprise.
Yeah, so I'm not going to shake up the running back rankings in terms of P. Ryan and Marshall. I might bump up Marshall just a little bit, but not much. I actually kind of factored him into that role a little bit in the running back rankings, which you can find on DKPlaybook.com. Don't forget, but now the update needs to come in. Paxton Lynch. I had the Brock Lobster ranked, I have him listed as the Brock Ness Monster. He is number 26 in the rankings. Would you change that with Paxton Lynch? Would you start Paxton Lynch?
Oh, there's no way on earth I'm starting Paxton Lynch. I like Joe Flacco better than Paxton Lynch because this feels like Joe Flacco's got the matchup of matchups this week right now, and this feels like he always does it one time a year. You have the 3 or 4 touchdown game coming. This is, if it's going to happen this season, because he's been miserable, this is the game.
All right, so I had Demaryius Thomas ranked at number 21 in the wide receiver rankings. I had Emmanuel Sanders ranked at number 27 in the wide receiver rankings. What do you think Paxton Lynch does to those guys? Because if Brock Lobster could do one thing, it was look at one guy and throw to him over and over. Do we even know if Paxton Lynch has a favorite receiver?
No, I don't think we can definitively say so. We don't have a big enough sample, and that was the one good thing about Demaryius Thomas and Brock Lobster. You just got me saying it. Brock Osweiler playing together is that he just loves going to Demaryius Thomas. I'm looking at your rankings right now, and Demaryius Thomas, oh, wow. I think you got it. I would play Stephon Diggs. I don't know how much further I'd go on him, but Emmanuel Sanders would drop a few spots. probably behind Amendola. I'm not going to move him that far down, but I think they both take a hit, probably about a half of a tier at most.
Well, I guess the big question is Paxton Lynch better than Brock Osweiler? Because he might be. I mean, it wouldn't be a hard bar to clear.
But he hasn't shown it yet. I mean, he definitely might be. He's probably got actually not probably. He has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in Denver, but he hasn't put anything together on the field that would make you say, all right, I trust him to be able to get to the weapons that he needs to get to this week. And not to mention, look, we have the offensive coordinator change this week with Musgrave. So who knows what's going on this week? I mean, this is just going to be I wish I had the answers. I hate when I don't have the answers for the people that are listening to us, but with all the changes that just happened, the firing the offensive coordinator, now you have Paxton Lynch starting, and the running back situation, which has been a mess. You want me to be able to tell you I know? Because I don't even know that the head coaches know what's going to happen this week.
All right, I'm going to keep Demaryius Thomas at number 21. I'm going to bump down Emmanuel Sanders into that like Corey Coleman level around like 35. And then with Paxton Lynch, I'm going to move him one spot ahead of Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles at Arizona, I'll move Paxton Lynch into number 27 at quarterback, one spot behind Joe Flacco. So not a must start by any means. Basically, he is a must bench.
Yeah, pretty much. I might have to go back. I'd grab him in a super flex, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, if you play in a 2-quarterback league, you do have to go pick him up. That's just them's the rules of 2-quarterback leagues.
I in a super flex last week. That didn't work out so hot.
No, I can see that not working out. You probably, instead of owning Peterman, just take like Patrick Mahomes in the hope that he gets in somehow.
Exactly.
Any other quarterbacks you want to mention before we move on to tight ends?
No, I think that your rankings look pretty solid. I feel a little bit better about Ben Roethlisberger, even though I hate the guy, especially when it comes to fantasy. But he is at home, and the Green Bay Packers secondary is abysmal.
I just think it's a bell week.
Hey, that's fine, but a lot of that could come from Ben Roethlisberger.
Potentially. Tight ends, I got Kelsey at number 1, Gronk at 2, Vernon Davis at number 3. That's assuming Jordan Reed doesn't play, and it doesn't look like he's going to play, so boom, Vernon Davis, play him. Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz, Jimmy Graham, Greg Olsen back. I have him at number 7. I'm going to hesitate a little bit with him. Jack Doyle, Kyle Rudolph, Delaney Walker. It's so nice to have a full complement of games where you can use all the tight ends, and I'm not being like, oh man, you should use Tyler Higbee this week. You don't need to do that anymore.
No, you don't. But you haven't got to one where actually your entire list, I don't have a problem with most of them. I do have one that I think is way too high.
Well, there's one. I had Austin Traylor ranked at number 18 just because I thought the floor was good for him without A.J. Derby around it. Brock Osweiler was developing a relationship with him. I'm going to have to move him down now because of Paxton Lynch starting. I just don't know. He's going to be buried in the rankings. Who is the guy that you would move up?
No, I would move down. Cameron Brate. Ryan Fitzpatrick hates him. He hates the guy. It's the antithesis of the Kenny Stills, Matt Moore. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not going to Cameron Brate. I wish I could change it, but Cameron Brate has done nothing since Fitzpatrick has taken over, while Fitzpatrick is actually looking at everybody else. O.J. Howard, even the rest of he's going to third-level tight ends before he's going to Cameron Brate.
All right, so I'll move Brate down, but that's sort of like the drop. The cutoff point with Austin Seferian and Jenkins at number 11, that's where I feel good about tight ends, and then it's a whole mismatch of whoever. So Tyler Kroft's dealing with a hand injury. I don't even know if he's going to play. I have him listed in right now. It's a really good matchup against the Browns. Would CJ Uzomah become a streamer if Kroft doesn't play against Cleveland?
Hey, look, it's like the Cleveland, it's like the Giants, it's the Broncos, it's all those teams that you can face and look and say, hey, this is your streaming option here. And like all you're doing with the tight end is you're hoping that they score. You get a tight end touchdown, he's a tight end 1 that week. Congratulations. And so that's, yes, he could definitely be a streamer.
All right, so Brate or Charles Clay?
Charles Clay.
Brate or Eric Ebron? Ebron's been back. In the last 2 weeks, Ebron's getting involved again. He's at least getting a market share again.
He is. I'd probably actually go with Ebron. Actually, I would even go C.J. Fedorowicz, but you have C.J. Fedorowicz a lot lower.
Well, that's because it's against Baltimore. But and I know they're susceptible.
Well, Baltimore's not good against the tight end.
They're not, but the Texans still can divvy it up between Steven Anderson and C.J. Fedorowicz, and I still like Bruce Ellington a little bit. Austin Hooper or Cameron Brate?
Hooper.
Ben Watson or Cameron Brate?
This is full PPR. Ben Watson if he's healthy.
Eleanor Higbee?
No.
All right, so that's the spot, number 18?
Yeah.
All right, let's move to
defense. Now I'm with Cameron Brate. He's going to get his 3 targets at best with Fitzpatrick at quarterback, and you just hope one of them's a touchdown.
Yeah, there you go. Defenses to close this out. I go Pittsburgh as the best matchup of the week against Brett Hundley at home on Sunday night against a great offensive line versus a great defensive line versus a bad offensive line. Sign me up. Jacksonville, very much the same way. Baltimore, very much the same way. Carolina, sneakily a top 10 pass rush this year. The Jets, a bottom 10 offensive line. I like the Panthers' defense this week. Philadelphia, Cincinnati, the Chargers, Seattle, Minnesota, Washington, into Atlanta, New England, Houston, whatever. You can pick up a lot of these defenses off the waiver wire. Are there any defenses in particular you would like to highlight?
I just think the one that you brought up before for your counter argument to my point about Kenny Stills, the Patriots defense has been playing better. And if Matt Moore gets too aggressive, which he definitely can do, like Jay Cutler, you could see a couple interceptions racked up.
That's true. They might get the one problem I have with New England is that they've been limiting opposing teams' offenses by dropping into coverage and just playing really solid defense. But where they have no pass rush really to speak of, I don't like. I mean, the defenses fantasy-wise that I always want to target are good pass rushes that can generate pressure against a team that's going to throw the ball a lot, just so you get that extra volume of creating fumbles, creating sacks, creating turnovers, and potential scores. And Matt Moore might be abysmal and throw some picks. I need to see more incompletions and turnovers for him, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense, honestly. That's why I like your defensive rankings so much every single week, because a lot of the ones that I'm looking at, like Carolina, Washington, is like the sneaky plays for what you just said. You usually have them ranked high. So you always ask me for a sleeper defense, like you got them inside your top 10.
Well, it's funny. I'm just looking at it right now. I don't have New Orleans on this list. I should probably insert them in. I don't love them because their pass rush might be mitigated by the tremendous offensive line by the Rams right now. But if they do get up in that game, Goff's going to have to pass. And if they do get pressure, Goff could turn into a turnover factory pretty quickly, especially if Lattimore ends up super healthy. So would you insert New Orleans onto this list anywhere? Maybe ahead of Houston, behind New England?
Ahead of Houston, probably. Well, Joe Flacco can go crazy, as I said. Like, he can go off, or he can be Joe Flacco throwing like a Jay Cutler kind of day. I think that's a fair spot for it, mostly if Lattimore plays. Without him, you look at it too. Jared Goff against good or great defenses hasn't been good at all this year. He's been feasting on terrible matchups. So if I'm looking at this as what you just said, the Saints are intriguing if Lattimore's playing.
All right, so I'm going to assume that's going to happen. Insert the Saints in at number 13. One spot behind the Patriots, one spot ahead of the Texans. Just in the off chance that, the Rams get it going and they open up the offense. I mean, we've seen it more times than not this year, but you are right. They have preyed more on weaker defenses than they have against strong defenses. I went with that method last week, and it turned out disastrously for me because Minnesota's defense was up to the task. Outside of the first drive of the game, mind you, where Jared Goff looked excellent, he was kind of piss poor after that.
It definitely was.
All right, that'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 12 Rankings Debate. Jake, have a happy Thanksgiving, man.
I will try, sir. I'll be up there. I'll be working almost as much as you are. I'm not doing the Periscope thing.
Tell everyone where they can find you.
They can find me on Twitter at AllInKid, and they can find my rankings that will be updated that morning. That's what I'll be working at and doing. So don't try and tweet me, because that's what I'm working on. Those are at rotoexperts.com. Fantasy Sports Radio Network, about to jump on there 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Award-winning on target. And then, as you mentioned, the Fantasy Network YouTube channel, just throw a rock and usually hit me somewhere.
Perfect. Again, that's AllInKid on Twitter and rotoexperts.com to either talk to Jake directly, where he will tweet you a link to his rankings on rotoexperts.com. For me, you can find me at the PME on Twitter. Remember, again, that Periscope after the Lions-Vikings game on Thursday. Get away from your family. Come hang out with me. It'll be fun, I promise. Again, that's Periscope at the PME on Periscope or on Twitter. You can follow along with every bit of content on facebook.com/thepme. You can subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio versions on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Audio Boom. And for the full video versions, uncut, Draftkings YouTube page. All right, full rankings up on dkplaybook.com. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck in Week 12. I'll see you next time.